What's up, world? YouTube. How y'all doing out there? Right now, in a park, just trying to get some sunshine. Um, don't get many opportunities to do this because of the weather and because of my responsibilities lately. But it feels good to be out here and do this. And if you hear some knocking, there's some people playing croquet. So that's what that is if you hear it. And right now, nowadays for me, things are kind of awkward nowadays because of the coronavirus scare going on. A lot of people talking about this, and there's a lot of paranoia surrounding this issue. And like even me right now, I'm off work for a few days because of it. But this is a blessing for me because I get to do this. I get to be out here in nature getting some sunshine, which I haven't really had much of a chance to do like over the past few months because of responsibilities and stuff like this. So it's a blessing, and I really appreciate having this opportunity. And I'm not too concerned about this coronavirus thing because over like the past couple of decades, this happens over and over. It's like a pattern. So I've seen like every few years there'll be like some new scary virus that the media just perpetuates the paranoia, and then after like a couple of months, everyone just kind of forgets about it. It's like it never happened. So I don't see this as anything different. And even here where I am, there's a lot of paranoia going on about it. I'm in South Korea, and everyone's protecting themselves and talking about it and kind of staying home. They're like avoiding public places here. And another reason why I'm not too worried about this is because astrologically, Mercury, the planet of information, the news, communication, things like this, it's retrograde, which means there's blocks, there's stalls on communication and problems with communication, and retrograde means it's going away from us. So we're not getting like the positive effects or the full energy of the things that Mercury usually offers. And another part of this is that another thing about this is that Mercury is in Pisces, the sign of Pisces. Pisces is like the deep imagination, deep subconscious, and things like this. And Mercury does not like to be in Pisces. Mercury is like information. Pisces is like a deep imagination, and Mercury doesn't do well there. So this may have some like big effect on the reason why this whole thing with coronavirus is kind of spinning out of control, because Mercury, the news, and Pisces, like the deep imagination. You know, people just getting caught up in their imaginations and letting their imaginations run wild. So I'm kind of seeing it that way, and of course I could be wrong. But let's get started with this video. What's the video going to be about? My focus in this video is going to be about water, but not just plain old water. It's going to be primarily about the water that's inside of our bodies, the water that we make, because that water is really special. And it's special because it is highly energetic. It is energy within itself. And I'm also going to talk about just plain old hydration, regular water that we use to hydrate ourselves. And I'm going to tie all of this. I'm going to kind of talk about aging in a way. And this kind of ties into what I've been thinking about a lot lately in my life because of where I live. I live in a city. I've been living in a city for like the past almost a year, and I've been kind of concerned about being, too separated from nature. Like I've been working a lot, so I don't get out as much as I would like to, and I'm kind of seeing, kind of firsthand, kind of learning the hard way of what these separations do to you and how they affect you. So I kind of like did some research, kind of backtracked a little bit, and kind of learned about water, because water is it has a very close relationship to what I'm going to talk about, and what I'm going to talk about is it's going to be centered around the sun, and I'm going to talk about like how the sun has an effect on the water within us, how it helps us make the water, and those effects on aging or anti-aging or just high energy production. So how am I going to lay this video out? I'm going to lay it out like this. I'm going to start off by talking about the sun, like how the sun makes energy, like how the sun works, just give kind of a general overview, and talk about things like that. And then I'm going to scale it down and start talking about mitochondria, because mitochondria are very similar to stars, or very similar to the sun. So I'm gonna kind of compare the two, our mitochondria and stars, or our mitochondria and the sun. And then from there, I'm going to talk about how mitochondria produce energy, and I'm going to talk about one thing that mitochondria produce, which is water. And I'm going to talk about how we get water directly from the sun. It's like we hydrate directly through the sun. And I'm going to discuss some of these things, and some of what I talk about is going to kind of go against what you probably see as common sense. But bear with me, because I'll provide some sources, some professional sources, some academic sources, and even some previous videos that I've made that'll go further in depth about what I'm talking about and make this more understandable and more easier to digest. And from there, I'm going to talk about some simple things we can do that I guess you could look at it as anti-aging, and also keeping our bodies hydrated, and like talk about some things that prevent that dehydrate us, that you don't even really think dehydrates you. And I'm gonna talk about just like some quick fixes, or some things you can do to mitigate and prevent these things from happening, and help just make you more aware of things like this. And I'm gonna I guess end the video by talking about water. And there are levels to water. All water isn't the same, and right now I'm talking about drinking water. And I'm going to talk about some things that make drinking water more powerful or less powerful. And I guess the primary tie to anti-aging that I'm going to talk about in regards to water is that I guess one observation one can make about aging and water is that the older a person gets, they tend to dry out. Everything tends to get dry. I guess the thing you can see the easiest or the clearest is a person's skin, but actually everything dries out. The entire body dries out. And yeah, that's like the type of things that I'm going to talk about in this video. So let's get started. I'll begin by talking about the 4 phases of matter. The 4 phases of matter are gas, liquid, and solid. The 4th phase is plasma. And what's plasma? Plasma is a very, very, very high energy phase of matter. And plasma is associated with stars, or like some extreme way of making energy. or like the use of electricity for lighting and things like this. So plasma, very, very high energy phase of matter. And why am I talking about phases of matter? I talk about that to lead into introducing and talking about the sun and how it works. Our sun, based on science, of course, our sun, it's it creates and makes energy through nuclear fusion, where basically the electrons are separated from the sun, from the main mass of the sun. And when this separation occurs, and it takes tremendous amounts of energy for this separation to happen in the first place, and I truly don't really understand it, the science of it, but when this separation occurs, huge amounts of energy is released. And this energy that's released is called plasma. And even the light that we get from the sun, the light that you see shining right now from the sun, is a type of plasma. So that's the sun in a nutshell. That's how it makes energy. Now let's scale it down and talk about something else that's very similar to stars, very similar to the sun, and also makes tremendous amounts of energy. Oh yeah, and with the sun, what they say helps make these electron separations in order for this energy to be put out is that within the sun there's tremendous pressure and tremendous heat. They say that's the catalyst that separates the electrons from the main mass of the sun. So now let's talk about mitochondria. I went from the sun to talking about mitochondria here because the sun, which is a star, is quite similar to a mitochondria, and I want to kind of show some of these similarities and talk about them. Now, mitochondria, it does lots of things that the sun does, and the way they make energy are they're similar, but kind of in inverse ways, but similar. Like the sun, it releases, it separates the electrons from its main energy center through nuclear fusion, from what I've learned. And it does this with intense pressure and heat, which is what's used to separate the electrons from the mass, the main mass of the sun. But with the mitochondria, it creates energy through a very, very, very high like voltage, or like a type of voltage, if you wanted to compare it to something. And from what I've learned, it uses like one mitochondria it utilizes like 30 million volts. So one mitochondria has the energy of like a bolt of lightning. So very, very powerful organism. And a mitochondria, it does things like it does other things like the sun. For example, the sun releases heat and energy like a plasma. Mitochondria release heat and light, a plasma. And mitochondria, the light that mitochondria release and emit is in the red spectrum. It's infrared light, which is the body heat that we produce, and it's from our mitochondria. So that's another similarity. They both put off light and heat. And our mitochondria, they release protons, and protons are like positive energy, like energy that's put out, that's ready to go. And the sun is similar to that. It puts out photons. And a mitochondria, a couple of byproducts from mitochondria are carbon dioxide. It lets off carbon dioxide, and it also lets off water. But the water that mitochondria put off is very special. It's living water. It's water that's very much alive and very high energy. And this water itself it's considered like a type of plasma. And we are that water. It's it's the living water within us. It's not the same as the water that we drink. And that's what I'm focusing on here. So before we go on to the next thing, let's talk about how mitochondria make energy and make the other things that it makes. So I'm going to kind of do a little bit of review about what a mitochondria does, and I'm just going to lay it out. I've done it before in other videos, and I'll put the links below if you want to reference those videos. And yeah, let's go to the next. Okay, a quick review about mitochondria and how they work. Mitochondria, again, there's tens, not tens, but hundreds to thousands of mitochondria on each one of our cells. And each mitochondria can create the amount of energy equivalent to a bolt of lightning. Of course, on the scale of a mitochondria, very, very small mitochondria, the equivalent is a bolt of lightning. So they're very, very powerful. And mitochondria, how they work. In our bodies, we breathe oxygen, and our mitochondria get the oxygen. The reason why they get the oxygen is so that oxygen can accept the electrons. Oxygen is an electron acceptor. And we eat to script the electrons from the food that we eat to feed our mitochondria. And also the environments that we spend time in, we get electrons from our environments. Like if we walk on the ground, especially barefoot, we're picking up electrons there to feed our mitochondria and feed our body. And we're getting photons and energy from the sun as well. This can be used too. And when our mitochondria receive these electrons, our mitochondria begin to reduce these electrons down to simpler units. And when the electrons get reduced, energy gets released. It's kind of like the same thing with the sun, with the nuclear fusion, but you scale it to a mitochondria, it breaks down electrons, and energy is released. And when electrons are broken down, a few things are produced by the mitochondria. The mitochondria produces infrared light. I just mentioned it. It produces CO2, which is carbon dioxide, which we think is a waste product, but it may be something else. It's probably for another use because nothing is waste. And it releases protons. Protons is basically energy that is used for the cell. And it also makes water. And that's one of the main focuses of this video, that water. What's special about that water? That water is like a type of plasma. It's a very, very high energy water, and it's living, and it's quite mysterious because it's not what we recognize as just plain old water. So that's a mitochondria in a nutshell. Now let's talk about this water, the main topic here. So yes, exposure to the sun hydrates us, and that probably goes against your common sense. But let me explain. Receiving sunlight, what it does, you're storing lots of energy into your body through your skin, through your eyes, and like one pathway that I can explain. There's lots of different pathways, lots of different types of energy that we're getting from the sun when we're exposed to it. But one pathway that I can explain and kind of illustrate and show you what I'm talking about and what I mean is that when we're outside and we see sunlight. The more we see, the better, especially strong sunlight, some good UV light. We make a hormone called melatonin. And the hormone melatonin is the sleep and regeneration hormone. It gets released after we're in complete darkness and about to go to sleep. But we get it from the sun. The primary place is from the sun. And one way we know that we've made lots of melatonin and we've had really good sunshine is because we dream a lot, and our sleep is really good, really solid. And when this happens, when we get this good deep sleep from having lots of melatonin released after we've gone to sleep, we got the melatonin from exposure to the sunshine, then our mitochondria get recycle and regenerate, because mitochondria is one of the primary hormones that recycles and regenerates our mitochondria. And by this processing, recycling and regenerating your mitochondria is preparing you to deal with the sun a whole lot better the next day, because you're ready to make this water, this living water. And this water is highly energy absorbent. It's ready to absorb energy. So it's going to help you absorb the sun a lot better the next day. So if you aren't exposed to the sun, you're not reviving and recovering your mitochondria on a daily basis. You're basically putting yourself on borrowed time, because your mitochondria are one of the main, for lack of better words, participants that help your body deal with the sun well. And having good, strong, functioning mitochondria is from having a good relationship and being in the sun and being exposed to the sun. And the more sun you can be exposed to and deal with, the healthier you'll be, and the higher functioning your mitochondria will be. And yeah, so basically, when you're out in the sun, you're hydrating directly from the sun. The sun is feeding your mitochondria so that they can convert that energy straight to water, straight to living energy. Living you, functional water. And there are some things that dehydrate you, that ruin your mitochondrial function, other than not getting enough sunlight, such as when you're inside, you're away from the sun, you were probably under artificial lighting, artificial sun, blue spectrum light, which I think we all know pretty well about the detrimental effects of blue spectrum light and what it does to your sleep. And anything that ruins your sleep ruins your mitochondrial function, which makes you not be able to handle the sun well. So I guess what I'm kind of like one of the bottom lines here is that like if you ruin your sleep is a real good indicator. You ruin your sleep, you're ruining your ability to handle the sun well. They go hand in hand. Another thing, besides being excessively exposed to blue spectrum light and just letting blue spectrum light replace the sun, which is a big mistake, is being in a place where there are just too many artificial energetic fields. And when I say energetic fields, I'm talking about like you're around a bunch of technology, you're around electromagnetic fields, you're around radio waves, microwaves, things like this. And like a lot of our technology is based on like using these artificial energetic fields. And if you live in a city, that means you're constantly in and out of different energetic fields, and you don't really have a choice because of the location, because of where you live, especially if it's like a really dense city and there's like just nothing but just concrete jungle everywhere all around you. Kind of like a lot of where I live now. and I need to figure out something and find an alternative to this, which I will do very soon. But yeah, energetic fields. That's another thing. If you're in false artificial energetic fields all the time, it means you're constantly being microwaved. You're being slow cooked, and this is one of the things that dehydrates you, like slowly cooks you, slow cooks you over time. It's not noticeable, right away, but it's a constant thing. And even like where you live, the place where you live, if there's like some false artificial magnetic field where you live, you're constantly in that, and you're sleeping in it, and you're in it all the time. You're constantly being slow cooked by those fields. And I did a video about that. Is our electromagnetic fields stealing sun from us, and that's what I was kind of talking about when I made that video. That was my mindset in that video. And yeah, those are some of the main things that kind of take the sun from you and age you faster. And when I say aging, I'm focusing on dehydration here. There's other aspects to aging, but my focus here is dehydration. And so now, what can be done about this? What can be done about this? How can we support ourselves better? How can we combat this? Well, the number one thing you should do is change your environment. Spend time in natural environments. Change where you live. And for many people, that's not an option, I guess. No one's willing to just up and do that. I mean, I am. It's kind of, I'm not doing it, but I will. I'm willing to just up and change if I have to. And I am soon. But yeah, your environment is the number one thing. Change your environment, or spend time in good places, and check your home. Make sure your home is good. That's one of the main things, whether you live in a city or not. And if you live in one of these places where it's just constant microwave, then your water intake, your hydration needs to be more on point. You need to be drinking more water. And the next thing I just talked about earlier about being under blue spectrum light inside of buildings. A lot of us have to be because we go to work and stuff. But for me, my strategy for being under artificial lighting, blue light, or even energetic fields, for every 1 hour that I spend like in a room at work under these conditions, I drink like a liter of water. That's my system. I'm not saying that's the best thing or that's like but that's what I do. It's kind of my plan, my system to kind of put in what was being taken away from me. But you can't replace it. You can't replace nature. You just got to get back in nature. But that's a mitigation technique. So yeah, I'm talking about hydration here. And yes, there are levels to hydration and levels to drinking water. All drinking water isn't the same. We can make our drinking water better by doing little things to it and by understanding it more. And I made a video way back, a year or so ago. It was called Next Level Drinking Water. I'll drop the link below. And it talked about some simple things you can do to your drinking water to make it more bioavailable and more healthier. And it can carry more energy. And yeah, so there are some things you can do to drinking water, or some things you can watch out for when it comes to drinking water and replacing. And again, like with the hydration, you're replacing what your environment is taking from you. Like you get hydration from getting sunlight, and again, that's counterintuitive. It does not seem like common sense, but you get you get hydration just from being in the sun. But and kind of one of the main ideas here is the more you're not in the sun, the more you're missing out on the sun, the better your hydration needs to be. Not so much that the more you're in the sun, the better your hydration needs to be. Of course, you need to hydrate if you're losing the water in the sun, but uh, one of the main focuses that people don't really think about is that the time you spend out of the sun, that's when that's the you need to focus on your hydration then, because it's not you in that case it's not the water that you're losing there, you can't see it. It's a process that you miss because it's a kind of a slow process, and it kind of goes under your radar. Now with sweating, you know you're sweating, so you know to replace it. But with mitochondrial damage, you don't know. It's kind of a slow process, and it can go under your nose, and you don't even realize it. So that's what I'm getting at here. But there are levels to drinking water, and here's a couple of things to think about when you consider drinking water or try to prep your drinking water. Of course, one of the main things is fluoride, and depending on where you live, your country or your state or whichever part of your country you live in, you may have different regulations on what they can do to the drinking water. But in my home country, fluoride's a biggie, and what fluoride does is that it reduces the amount of energy that water can hold, because on the periodic table it's you have to look at the polarity of it on the periodic table. It's quite different from other elements, and by putting it in the water, it reduces the amount of energy that the water can hold. And also, fluoride is just basically a poison, and you know, it's put in drinking water, I guess, to help preserve teeth enamel and things like this. But you know, it doesn't help drinking it. And what else? Of course, the pH of water, the amount of hydrogens in water, is important, because the pH in water, it can keep you healthy, because pathogens can't live in high pH. They live better in more acidic conditions, which a low pH. And also hydrogens. We can use hydrogens directly as energy, directly as food, because all of our carbohydrates, proteins, fats, they have their molecular structure. They have lots of hydrogens, and our bodies can use and break down the hydrogens from water and harvest the hydrogens for energy. And also the hydrogens help perpetuate our mitochondrial's ability of being used. They work hand in hand. Like the hydrogens that we get from water, it helps your mitochondria to function and function well. So water goes way deep, and yeah, pH is one thing that's important. Another thing to think about when it comes to water is water is a magnetic dipole. Yeah, and water can be magnetized. When you magnetize water, from my experience, it makes the water wetter. It's more digestible, and it shrinks the molecules. And like when you drink it, it's like you want to drink more. The hydration is way better, in my experience. And yeah, I talked about it in my next level drinking water video. Check that out. The link's gonna be below. And yeah, right now I'm at my favorite coffee shop. Is near where I live, and I'm about to start my day. And this is my view. It's early, and yeah, I'm just kind of watching traffic here nearby where I live. And yeah, thank you for spending a little bit of your time with me, and I hope everyone is doing great and healthy, staying well, and I love you all. Please like, share, subscribe, comment, browse my channel, and I'll see you next time. Take care.